Hello everyone, Ollie Snyder here, and this week I'll be discussing my view on the seed of Abraham, slavery and sin, reproducing Johannine anti-Judaism in the modern commentaries on John 8:31 to 34, and it's by Ruth Sheridan. To tell you honestly, I wish the article went back to Genesis before engaging in John's writings, and there was more association between Abraham and Yeshua. I did not really enjoy reading this, and here's my summary of it and my honest opinion of why I felt the way I did. Sheridan's article claims to call into attention the discussion between Jesus and some of his followers written in John 8, specifically focusing on verses 31 to 59. Now, she claims that the negative association to the Jews in John's gospel outweigh the positive ones. And she begins by listing numerous authors of great prominence to make this claim. Now, the article is filled with quotes bashing the Jewish people, although Jesus was only directing his anger towards a very small minority in this crowd. So by labeling Jesus' family and friends, as well as his enemies, the Jews, their discourse tries to overwhelmingly persuade the reader into anti-Semitism. So here's some examples. As a character group, the Jews are associated with traits that reputedly arise from a love of darkness and evil. For example, the Jews are depicted as hostile towards Jesus, as refusing to believe in him and actively seeking his death. The Jews had arrogated freedom to themselves on the basis of being the seed of Abraham. Thus, Jesus' words to the Jews would have greatly humbled them, because as supposed lords of the world needed to be delivered from slavery by Jesus. Jesus' words constituted an annihilation of their high-minded pretensions and pulled them down to the level of the Gentiles. Now, Ruth Sheridan adds in commentary about a German and Lutheran theologian. In that worldview, pretentious Jews apparently aspired to plutocratic domination of the world if they did not already engineer global events insidiously behind the scenes. She lists an Anglican bishop's commentary who ascribes negative traits to the Jews on the basis of the response to Jesus. Being the seed of Abraham was the proudest boast of the Jews. She lists a Catholic priest and a New Testament scholar who said that this ill-founded boast of the Jews is they see themselves as this privileged heirs to the promise to Abraham. I mean, just quote after quote. The Jews thus have to be converted from their righteousness to a confession of their ties to sin. And to me, there was just so much negativity in the article that there wasn't enough truth at the end of it to pull it all together and to balance the negative anti-Semitic tones and undertones and overtones and you name it throughout the article. Sheridan points out the reasons that the anti-Semitic boast begun for so many who interpreted John 8 in almost like an autoimmune attack kind of a way. The Jews boasted about their descent from Abraham. They missed that they were actually slaves without Jesus and can be free only as Christians, thus staying in their sins forever. So these 3 points about the Jews, like a more than an acceptance, but like a loyalty to or a nationality, and they felt like Okay. So the 3 things reading some of the quotes from so many scholars, I picked up such jealousy over their nationalism. Similar to like an anti-nationalism we see in today's news from many Americans. You can even read hatred between some lines, whereas the quotes themselves were saying it was Jews who were hateful, but in turn, the writing about the Jews was nothing but hateful. So there was just a lot of hypocrisy in a lot of these writings and a lot of these commentaries from supposed, great scholars and leaders and priests and bishops and theologians of the ages. Sheridan lists a highly decorated religious leader, Thomas Brody, in an article, who said the Jews who had believed in Jesus as they were like superficial believers. They professed to follow Jesus while following the enslaved traditions of Judaism. It's almost like they had to forego their Judaism. They had to forego their traditions and their culture and their identity in order to become Christians. And if they weren't willing to do so, then they were superficial believers. They weren't true Christians. She says that Brody depicted Jews as evil, associated them with the devil based on their rejection of the freedom Jesus offered, because they wanted to keep the freedom they felt was held in Abraham. So this in turn was interpreted to mean that the Jews were almost anti-Christ, anti the Messiah, anti-Christianity, because they would not let go of their patriarch Abraham's faith. And I mean, nothing can be farther from the truth. And it's the faith in Abraham that began and is the faith of us all that has gotten us to this point. And so just reading this, I've just been very, very honestly upset and reading so many viewpoints of, like I said, highly respected theologians and leaders, that they would say things like this. Now, Jesus does not appear differentiated from the Jews, like it was said in the article, to the point that he seems non-Jewish, nor does he appear to be the first Christian. Jesus was not a Christian. Now, I've read about these priests, these religious leaders, theologians, professors, highly distinguished and esteemed scholars with many volumes of published materials on display, all misinterpreting the scriptures in such a way that they paved a way for anti-Semitism and most likely caused at least one other to veer away from God's family. I felt embarrassed on behalf of Christians, these religious leaders and theologians and scholars, because, met so many of my Jewish friends who look down upon Christian theologians and Christian leaders. And this is something that we must correct. Because how could such prominent figures in our history miss the heart of God while claiming to know him and to know about him? We have to fix this. It reminded me of a discussion we had not too long ago about whether or not whether we would seek spiritual encounters or testimonies, or we would go to academia to seek for truth and to find out more and learn more about what we're seeking knowledge about. We talked about how personal testimonies can be a bit outrageous, and sometimes academic work can be misinterpreted. And this was the case. Such was the case in reading this article. I really felt that. Sometimes I think instead of spending so much time thinking and formulating opinions on what we think about the Jews, we should have spent time discipling others on the vast, deep teachings of the Jews. We should have just seen the depth of our Bible, of our word, seen the point of it all, see the focus about God's heart for the Jewish people from Genesis to Revelation. I sometimes think Revelation is a more Jewish book than Genesis by far. So the commentators talk about pride and entitlement of the Jews, but it's actually anti-Semitism on their part. And it's their own pride and false sense of entitlement for the Christian faith that surfaces instead. It's very hypocritical to me in reading this. What I see is the possibility of, and this is just my own opinion, of Sheridan using so many of the past anti-Semitic writers and commentators on John 8, almost to project her own anti-Semitism, maybe hiding behind others, but saying what they feel, pointing out their great credentials, but in a very, very limited way, rebuking their theology. So there wasn't much from Sheridan to explain that all of these things were wrong. It was as if she wanted somebody to agree with her or somebody to possibly disagree with her. And if so, find out why they would. But in the meantime, this was her stance. And it, like I said, it didn't jive well with me. Let's put it that way. It seems sometimes writers, scholars, theologians, even pastors and priests and religious leaders want to appear more intelligent and superior and use words and extensive vocabulary, which I understand was how classes were sorted during certain periods when only certain people in certain classes were allowed books in schools, and only religious leaders were allowed the Bible. And I mean, we've gone through so much history with this. But in these end times before Jesus comes back, is it not more wise to speak so that any man can understand you, having enough confidence to not care about appearing wise to any man, speaking out without the fear of man, but with the fear of God? And it's not about, impressing anybody. Got me thinking, I don't want to write sermons to serve myself, to appear more knowledgeable than others, to prove that I have somehow achieved a higher status of academia or theology. I don't want to appear smart to others, but to be a light to the lost and a helping hand to those who need insight on their journey. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I need to be who I am, open and ready for Jesus to use me. And I just want to, end with this. Now, imagine if every nation was nationalistic, like the Jews were so accused of being. And imagine if every person in every nation loved who they were. They took pride in creating a better life for its citizens and leaders, and worked hard to ensure jobs and travel and economic prosperity, and fought for good education and built roads and bridges and unique architecture to incite tourism. It's like imagine Gentiles loved